Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. We are from Group 10 and our member are Sifa Islamiyati, Hagala Rosa, Ade Kurniawan, and me, Angga Respati. And today we are going to present you about conversation analysis. Let's start with conversation and context. Conversation analysis have deployed a wealth of insight into these matters and have elaborated an impressive arsenal of techniques for the description and explanation of the mechanism of conversation. Conversation analysis is a minimalist approach which allows only so much hypothesizing as is strictly required to explain the phenomena at hand. The second explanation is about from speech act to conversation. Speech act theory has been useful as an eye-opener, which making us see that language is not only a bunch of sentences. Speech acts are ways of doing things with our words, and our words work for us in speech acts. But how these words work, or how and where the speech acts are used, such as in conversation, is not immediately evident and cannot at any rate be derived from a formal framework. Conversation is what happens among people. When we use language together, as in conversation, our speech acting is only makes sense for our common context. The most important thing about speech acts is their function in speech. It is not crucial what the speech act represent officially. What counts is how conversationalists use them. For example, we have a sentence. The sentence is, "Why can't you shut up?" At the first, maybe we could assume that that was a question, and it could be. But in any normal context of conversation, we would consider that there is an order, an unpleasant kind of order. That sentence is a way of ordering the other person to shut his or her tongue. If we look a bit more closely at what's happening, we see that the majority of these comments are not formulated as a comments at all. It can be remarks, hints, maybe statements, doubts, question, and so on. For example, we can say, "I strongly suggest you to shut up," or "sometimes it's a good idea to shut up," or maybe we can say, "How about if you shut up?"
Okay, here I will continue Anggi's explanations. The next explanation is turns and turn-taking. According to Harvey Said, the founder of the conversational analytic method, the basic unit of the conversation is the turn. That is, a shift in the direction of the speaking, bow, which is characteristic of normal conversation. In opposition to, for example, the conversational monologue, that well-known party horror. Turns occur normally at certain, well-defined junctures in conversation. Such points are called transition-relevant places, or we can call TRPs. A TRP can be exploited by the speaker holding the floor. This may be done directly for the purpose of allowing the right to speak to another conversationalist of his or her choice. Alternatively, the current speaker may process more indirectly by throwing the floor wide open to whoever feels like opinions or further comments on this matter. The second general rule of next speaker selection is when a next speaker selects himself. In this case, one may want to obviate the possibility that a speaker just goes on self-selecting. The question is then, when somebody else can decide that they are going to start talking, this is where the concept of transition-relevant places become important. As to TRPs, we have the natural breaks occurring in every conversation. A speaker has to pause for breath, or runs out of things to say, or simply declares his or her contribution to be finished. All those points in the conversation are places where a natural transition, a relay of the right to speak to the speaker, may occur. On the other hand, there are formal rules of next speaker selection that regulate the turning taking. Obviously, a speaker may just ignore an upcoming TRP and hurry past it. Many old-time conversational practitioners, such as politicians, have the habit of ignoring a natural break that would have occurred at the end of, say, a sentence, with the corresponding intonational pattern before a full stop. Instead, they create an unnatural break, for example, in the form of a mid-sentence pause, and this allows the speaker to continue full speed across the next upcoming real TRP. Others employ the technique of masking a TRP by emitting treating noises, thus warning other speakers of their intention to continue past the TRP as soon as they have regained their breath. Another mechanism regulating the completion of a speaker's turn is enforced during, for example, storytelling. The current speaker announces that he or she has a story to tell and that the other speakers are expected to wait until the current speaker has completed his or her entire complex turn. All such mechanisms of selections or self or other are among the most important moving parts of the term management system. The conversational machinery, owned and operated by the actual and potential floor holders and jetters. On the other hand, the non-floor holders in a conversational situation are not more silent bystanders. First of all, their contributions to the conversational is an important element of the traffic phenomena that are often gathered by the common denominator of back-channeling, may vary in shape and frequency, but they are always of great importance for the flow of conversation. The back channeler provides support for the speaker in the form of short utterance, I see, right, and so on, or of various more or less articulate noises, regular phonetic ones as well as other. Curtain language have specialists in back channeling of the latter kind, thus Japanese reportedly has some different back channel devices called Isuzi, varying from regular utterance such as hi or it can called yes and so, I see, to vocalic and consonantal sound of great variety including grunts and oral or nasal suck-in breaths. Bystanders can also intervene in the conversational directly, for example by taking the floor, preferable at a TRP, so as not to be accused of interrupting the speaker. And next is previewing TRPs. Managing the conversation has a lot to do with one's ability to foresee what's going to happen around the next bend in the conversational path the next turn. The content-related aspects of this management will be dealt with later. Here, I will point to some of the formal aspects of what sometimes has been called predictability. Predictability has a lot to do with what Sake has called the adjacency relationship, holding chunks of conversational together despite their being spread out over time and occasionally spaced. Such final or intended to be final marker can be used as manipulative device, not only preventing others from joining the conversation, but signaling that what should have been one's next TRP should be considered the end point of the interchange, rather than a opening up of the floor for a new speaker. It is, I say, something like, to sum this all up, let me add the last comment, or concluding our discussion, we should nor omit such ritualized pre-closing signals are available for people leading meetings in conventional, standardized environments where they can routinely pronounce phrases such as "let us all pray" towards the end of an invocation, or non-hire first, second, third, at auctions, and "are you ready for the question?" But also in everyday conversations, many such sequences have a ritualist character that wholly or partially excludes a normal reaction. For example, greetings of the type "How are you?" are routinely followed by the predictable "Fine, and you?" Often such misunderstandings are caused by intercultural differences in the nature of the greetings. A more elaborated inquiry into the health of the greeted person, such as "How are you feeling this morning, ma'am?" What does conversation mean? The next few sessions will focus on questions having to do with the way conversational techniques are used to convey meaning. A true conversation never is the mere exchange for formalities, even though certain conversational activities such as greetings come pretty close in many societies. What we want to know is how the way one talks with people functions in human communication, both through the medium of the simple formalism that we have looked at earlier, such as thumb-taking, and by including other, more elaborate techniques. Pre-sequences. Utterances are usually, in some instances even always, felt to be precursors to something else, another utterance, or perhaps a sequence of utterances. The classical examples are the so-called attention getters, such as "Hey, you know something, excuse me," and so on, to which the usual answer would be "yes, what," or something in the same vein. After this initial exchange has been concluded, the real business can be dealt with. Utterances that serve as precursors to another are often called pre-sequences. Some of the most frequent pre-sequences are of the type sometimes called inquirers. Thus, usually present a request of some kind. Their function is to make sure that the request about to be made is indeed, from the point of the requestee, within the limits of the possible. For example, before purchasing an item in the shop or requesting information about something, help with a task, or any favor at all, we inquire about the available possibilities of obtaining that item, information, help, or favor. Okay, that's all from me. The next explanation will be explained by Haga.
Halo, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. The next material is the insertion sequences, smileys, and repairs. The agency or immediate neighboring relationships holds two utterances belonging to the same exchange, but there are cases where such immediately is not maintained. Insertion is used to effect remedial exchange such as repair. The first is sequences. In an insertion sequence, the normal flow is not stopped. Conversationalists behave as if they are aware that the turns in the talk or the operationing at different levels, and the mainstream of the conversation may continue its course even though the part is shunted off. So the insertion sequence is just like we insert sequence into a normal into a normal conversation, that and the insertion sequences, it doesn't affect that really much in the conversation. So the conversation still can continue in its course even though the part is sounded off. The second is smiley. The smiley here is maybe all of us knows know this thing smiley due to electronic message problem like misunderstanding a message. The computer buff invent the smileys to express a certain feeling or attitude toward what is being written. The smiley here is means like the facial expression. And oh, the smiley here we also call it like emoji like in the our handphone and the WhatsApp like Instagram and the others. We also find it in almost every social media. We see smileys, the smiley or we call it emojis. And the smiley or the emojis here is uh, used to express our feeling that may to to strengthen the expression and in the written text to make the people that we will talk to or I mean in the conversation in the message doesn't have the misunderstanding about the text. And the next is repairs. In many cases, an insurgent is motivated by a need to repair damaged conversation. There are various kinds of damage like misunderstanding and failure to observe normal sequencing. One distinguishes between self-initiated repairs and latter mostly consisting in correction offered to the speaker. So basically the insertion repairs here is used to correct the conversation or the way we talk before. It may be wrong or incomplete, wrong, and also can may cause misunderstanding. So the insertion repairs here is used to uh, make the sentence that we deliver to the other people is understandable and not make any other meaning or second meaning. The next is preferences. Preferences in this situation is like to refrain and consider and also giving clear explanation. Preferences is used to make sure and decide whether the person that we are talking to is saying the truth. So preferences is used to distinguish our refrain and our what is it our doubt. So we use the references to make sure that uh, for example we call someone and or we accepting we got a call from someone, so we have to what is it to ask them or him or her about their identity to make sure that who we are talking to is the right person, like that. And the next is from form to content. The previous selection contracept concentrated on the formal means conversationalists have their disposal for structuring their talk, measuring their intervention, and controlling their flow in communication. And the last for me is cohesion and coherence. Cohesion is the way words formally hang together in the sentence and the like. Cohesion has to with relation between surface and English form. Coherence captures the content-based connection between between the words that make them produce sense. Coherence refers to relation between communicative arts act. Thank you.
Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. So now I'd like to present the next material about adjacency pairs and content. So as we have seen, characteristic of conversation is its adjacency in pairwise structures. The word conversation itself evokes the ritually performed and metrically codified verbal changes that we are familiar with from the chorus of classical Greek drama are from monastic antiphonal, psalmody, and hymn singing. Conversation analysts such as Sachs in 1974 distinguished between the first pair part and the second pair part of any adjunctive pair. For instance, the first pair part may be a summons, then what constitutes the second pair part has to be an utterance which deals with compliance, either positive or negative, as in the following changes. So the conversation is like this. A. For the question, would you please close the window? And the answer is sure. And the second situation, could you please open the window? And the answer, no way. The second pair part may contain more information, for example, in a minute, or no, I'd rather have it open. But that wouldn't affect the exchange and thus the type of the adjacency pair. In general, the notion of type is useful when it comes to predicting what the answer could be and how it is managed. In a way, it defines the baseline for the second pair parts that are possible, but it does more. And then for the types on coherence, a typical adjacency pair is a question together with its answer. But what is its type? To solve that problem, one has to know what constitutes a legitimate answer to a question, given its particular electionary intent. Consider this following interchange. The question is Leonard there? And the answer, you can reach him at extension 88 to 36. So strictly speaking, this pair does not constitute regular question-answer type. The information requested by the speaker, whether or not Leonard there, at the listener's location, is not given except indirectly. By contrast, regular answers such as no, he's not, or I'm sorry, he's not here, or simply no, while staying strictly within the bounds of adjacency pair typology, would be very uninformative. The easiest way out of this dilemma is to assume that whatever follows a question simply is the answer. Under the assumption there strictly is no speech act of answering, no answerhood, as Levinson remarks. There is no proposed illocutionary force can only be properly defined and on the basis of, among other things, the preceding question. Then, conversation and speech acts. The regular paired structure of conversation has a parallel to the regularity with which certain speech acts manifest themselves as institutionalized acts, and to the obvious regularities that operate in speech act behavior: answer, follow questions, greetings, follow greetings, etc. Levinson in 1983 on 289. Consider now the following conversation exchange, in which John says to Mildred at a party they are both attending. Example modified from Levinson, 1983. So the question is getting late, Mildred? Among Mildred's possible answers, we could imagine at least the following three. First answer, are you really that bored? Or the second answer, do you want to go home? Or the simplest answer, so now if we want to determine the type of this exchange pair, We have to find out what John's utterance really stands for. Is it a statement about the time of day, an expression of boredom, an act of vengeance or punishment, or a secret code from remember to take your pill, or something entirely different? In other words, we must try to establish the illusionary intention of John's remark. What kind of speech act does it represent? A statement, admonition, request, threat, or confession? It all depends on such things as uh, how well Mildred knows John, what sort of party he is, and so on. To borrow a terminology originally developed in another context, one must know the script for this particular interaction in order to assess the contextual value of these particular utterances. So that's all for us, and thank you so much. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.